So my name is Sheza Khurshid. I currently live in Michigan. I'll start with a bit of backstory, I guess. I grew up in a city called Windsor, Ontario. It's on the border of Michigan and Ontario. So it's a very busy border crossing between the US and Canada. And I guess, so my parents, going back, I guess, a little bit further, they come from the mountains, they're from the Himalayas, and they're the people, they have this kind of relationship with the land, I guess. That's very, like if you've grown up there or if you've ever visited, you know what I'm talking about. It's very interdependent, but they also care for the land in a way it's very unique, I think. So growing up, I feel like nature was always a part of our lives. Like I grew up, every house that I can remember since my childhood, we've always had a garden. No matter how small, it was just like, there was always something. Even if it was just growing something in pots, I feel like, yeah, that was a very important part of our lives growing up. And a lot of my memories have to do with that, spending time outdoors, just being in the garden. And also, like, I remember whenever we would go out, my parents would point out things to us, especially my mom. She would say, like, oh, this tree serves this purpose, like when we would eat this from this tree, or we would use this for medicinal things, or just like roots and plants growing around. Everywhere we would go, she would find something to point out, like, this is the relationship that we have with this plant, or this part of nature, which, like, I didn't realize how special that was until I got older, and I realized, like, people don't have this relationship with the nature that and the environment around them. So I mean, that was really I guess that was a really essential part of my life growing up. And then going back to the city that I grew up in, as I mentioned, this border city, and it's a really busy border crossing. I think something like 1/3 of the trade between US and Canada goes through there. So it's a lot of trucks. So if you ever visit there, you'll just see, like, the highway is full of trucks. So the air quality there is very bad. And also they're downriver from a lot of the industrial big factories there. There's like the Ford plants. I think there's a coal burning power plant there in the Ohio area. So everything, the air is like carried down to Windsor. So I remember I must have been a teenager in high school. I think I read somewhere in the news about Windsor being the cancer capital of Canada because of the air quality and the particulate matter that was, people were inhaling. There was a lot of asthma, and I remember I was young at that time, but it just kind of struck me, and I just felt like I had to do something. And I was probably like maybe in 12th grade at that time. And around that same time, I guess, is when I started studying Islam. So my faith, I guess I could say, rediscovered it in a sense. Although I grew up Muslim, my family's Muslim, but, I feel like I had this kind of awakening where I felt like I had to relearn my faith and see if it was something that I wanted to follow as an individual, not because it was something that was taught to me. So those two things kind of happened around the same time. And so the more I learned about Islam, I was also learning about the environment at that time. And there was a lot of overlap that I could see from what I was reading and learning, that Islam talked a lot about the environment, and not always in direct ways, but it was just like this constant referring to nature. And if you ever read the Quran, you'll see a lot of the chapters of the Quran are named after parts of nature. So there's a chapter about the sun, and a chapter about the stars, and there's many in Arabic. The word is ayat, which means signs, plural for signs around us. And so God in the Quran constantly calls us to observe the signs around us, and a lot of times that's referring to nature. So there's like a verse that talks about a sign in the moon and the sun, and in the alternation of night and day, right? So and also like seeing the rain falling is a sign for those people who are willing to see it. And also I remember reading something about lightning, that's also a sign, which is like, if you think about it, it's such a scary thing, right? Like when lightning and thunder, you see them, it can be very scary. But if you look at it and with a different lens, it's actually very beautiful. So that kind of, yeah. And then also I remember reading a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that said that you should not waste water even if you were using it from a flowing stream. Which I remember reading that and I thought, what does that mean? I don't fully understand, because how can you waste something that's so abundant? And then the more I thought about it, and just, there's a lot that you can learn from that. But I feel like what I took away from it is that you should not take more than what you need. Even if you have abundance, does not mean you should take it. You take what you need and that's it, There's wisdom in that, a lot of wisdom in that. So yeah, that just, led to me, leading towards working with environmental groups. Towards the time I started college, I started getting involved with a lot of the local groups that were doing work. There was a movement towards, at that time, like creating more green spaces in our city because of all the green spaces that were taken away, and because of the, like building of the highways. And so I started getting involved with that, and also started getting involved with the mosque at the same time. And I remember one of the first projects that I did with the mosque was actually, we organized a river cleanup. And like, I just felt that it was so beautiful, that kind of, marrying of environmental work and caring for our ecosystems, along with, feeling like this is part of our faith. This is not an optional thing, it's something that we're called to do. And in the Quran, it's actually called, like, human beings are called khalifa, which means stewards. And stewards, as I'm sure you know, that means that you don't own the land. You don't own anything, but you're there to take care of it. So it just kind of, it kind of like informs for me, my worldview about nothing around us is ours, right? We're just here for a time to take care of it. Kind of thinking of the documentary that we watched last night. I feel like this is something that's shared across almost all the faiths that I've seen, that, we don't own any of this. Yeah, so then during college, that's where I started, doing working on both of these kind of things. And then I graduated. I actually went to school to study environmental science, because that was my passion, right? Turns out there was a lot of chemistry and physics and too much math for me. So I ended up, taking the courses that I took and then switching my major to political science, which I felt like there was a lot of overlap in both of those things. And then I graduated, and I eventually started working with our mosque in more of a leadership role. And during that time, we tried to implement a lot of, eco-friendly practices. We created a green team. That's what we called it at the time. This was, I think, in 2012, around that time. It's been a while, but it was, it went really well. There was obviously a lot of pushback on certain things, especially when it came to, things that required a financial commitment. But a lot of it went really well, and like we implemented a lot of practices that were very good, and also the educating the youth and getting the youth involved. So younger people, getting them, not just educating, but getting them involved in a hands-on way, which in my experience, it's a lot more effective than, sitting them in a classroom and teaching them. So we would, get the youth together and go to tree plantings and cleanups, and we actually did a lot of interfaith work. There's a Mennonite community in that area that we did a lot of work with at that time, and also other faith groups. So that was, I was there for quite a while until we ended up moving to Michigan. So that was, it was tough. It was a transition, because although they're so close, like I moved, I would say it's 45 minutes away from where I grew up. So from Windsor to Canton, which is Metro Detroit area, it's about 45 minutes. But it was, culturally, it was very different. The way that people, I guess, interact with the environment and our new community was very different. So in Canada, you'll see there is a huge emphasis on recycling. Composting is now in our city in Windsor, in my old city, I should say. They have compost pickup, which is, if you think about it, you don't see that very often, right? Like every household has compost being picked up. They've been given free bins, and like it's just very, I guess, revolutionary in that sense. Like you don't see that here. And here, like a lot of people in Michigan, I should say, not here. In Michigan, a lot of them don't even know what composting is, or what does it mean to try to reduce waste. So it was there was an adjustment period, and then I started getting involved with the mosque there, here in our new community in Canton. And just some of the programs that we started, that I got involved in, we were trying to implement zero waste, and trying to slowly teach people about recycling, and that there is a better way to do things, and how it's beneficial not just for the environment, but like indirectly for them. Like what are they getting out of it? Especially in our area, there is a lot of landfills, and waste is being imported to our area. So I feel like there's a tie in there that, we've just started doing this work, but to teach people that there is a connection between the waste that you're producing and the landfill that you see growing just, down the street from you. So that's what we're working on right now. So some of the really positive outcomes that we noticed was when you get your faith leaders, specifically the imams in our community, when you get them on board, you almost immediately see a change in the people. So in the community that I lived in before, we had a very strong, he was one of the imams in our community, one of the leaders, and he was really invested in these issues. And so he would, in his Friday sermons, he would talk about, what is our responsibility as Muslims, as people of faith, what is our responsibility to the earth and to the planet, why are we here, and what is our responsibility in terms of taking care of the environment around us. And so he would talk about that a lot, and I feel like that made a really positive difference, and not just in what people were doing at the mosque, but at home, right? And then also, like, it just became a lot easier to implement programs that initially there was a lot of resistance. Like, why do we need to put so much effort into recycling? And in Ramadan, you have thousands of people coming through the mosque, and the mosque that we worked in was the biggest mosque in the area. At that time, there were just maybe 2, 3 in the area, and that one served like thousands of people, thousands of congregants every week. And in Ramadan, you would see, I can't even count, like how many thousands of people coming through. So, like they would all come with their plastic water bottles, and in the beginning it was, we had to have people standing at the doors reminding them that, oh, this blue bin means that's for recycling, the black bin is for trash. And so it was a lot of just like hands-on, mobilizing a lot of the volunteers, especially the younger people. We got them involved, and they enjoyed it, and it worked a lot better that way. So that was really successful, working with the imam, if you can do that. And then just working with the youth, because in my experience, when you get the younger generation, especially the younger, really young kids, and then like, teenagers, and that kind of, you see their families start to get involved as well. So I feel like that's it's kind of like a bottom-up approach, rather than, because a lot of times, like, going to your next question, which is the challenges, when you're speaking to mosque leadership, a lot of times, and I'm sure this is true with most faith traditions, it's, when you're running an institution, your first focus is like, how do we keep this building running? Like, how do we, fund the operational costs? How do we keep the heat on, and all those things? So they don't necessarily see a benefit to putting, money towards buying recycling bins or paying more for compostable plates and forks and spoons and things like that. So the challenge, I guess, is number one, showing that it might be a cost initially, but in the long run, it will pay off. Even if we won't get our money back, but you'll see a difference. Maybe not in our lifetime, but you will see the benefit of what you're doing. So just trying to, I guess, like come up with a strong case for why you want to do that, why those initiatives are important. And then also like working the top down, it's good to get, you know, the leadership and like the board involved, because then you can pass an official, you know, something official that is on their website, that you can work on their website, and also they're putting you in touch with their committees. So you can work hand in hand with them in that sense. So it works to go both ways, in my experience. Like, you need to do both. Yeah. And also just like, I feel like there's so much to be done with the youth, especially with the younger, I have younger kids, I didn't mention that. So teaching my kids as they, you know, since the time they were babies, I feel like they've always been outside, like they're just always in the garden digging, and sort of like what I was saying with my parents, what they taught me. It's just so beautiful now seeing my parents, like my mom especially, teaching my kids, and like my kids are always gardening with her, and you know, they're always outside and they're not afraid of anything, you know, like they pick up worms, they pick up snakes, and they're not afraid of bugs, you know, like my son pets bumblebees, and so he's always telling all the kids in the neighborhood, like, oh, this is not stuff you need to be scared of. And so I just saw that, like, it's interesting because he's just, my son, he's 8, but he's been doing this since he was 5, you know, like basically, you know, I guess preaching in a sense about things to all the neighborhood kids, and immediately you see the difference, right? So like our neighbors, when we first moved into our house, they were so scared of, they would hardly step outside the house because, you know, like bugs. In the summer, there's a lot of bugs, right? So he would say to them, oh, you know, you don't have to worry, like mosquitoes bite us, but everything else is fine. And like, you don't need to worry about snakes. They don't do anything to us, you know, the garter snakes that we have in our yards. And so like 2 years down the road, I see the same kids, and they're now they're outside all the time, and they're just like, they have a different relationship with nature now, which I find, you know, it's beautiful. And just to see how kids, in a very indirect way, they can have this impact on others. So I've been working with my kids, and somehow through that, you know, through teaching my own kids and doing our own gardening, and we started a little nature group club for my kids, and people started joining that from our own community, in our Muslim community. And then we have a homeschool group which serves about more than 100 students in our area, elementary age students. The principal then came to me and she said, oh, can you teach this at a larger scale, you know, teach it to our students in the form of a course. So we actually ended up doing that last year. Yeah, it was the first time that we offered a class about outdoor skills and how to engage with nature in a, you know, in a productive way, and also how to take care of the environment. So hopefully that will be a recurring course that we can work on. And yeah, I need help with it because it's a lot. Yeah. And I'm not a teacher by profession, but you know, it's been really interesting, and really like you see the effects right away. The transition from just teaching my children, and not even teaching them, it just very naturally happened, to now, you know, I don't know how many students, we had like at least 60 students last semester. So the virtual portion of prep, it was really good because I feel like we need a bit of theory to understand a lot of the things that we've been working on, but sometimes we don't have that full understanding of the details, and especially the science behind some of the things. So I found that portion really helpful, learning the science, and then also learning about, I know about like Islam, like our faith tradition, what it says about the environment. I feel very well versed in that, but I didn't know about the other faith traditions. So like just reading about that, and learning that there are so many similarities with what all of the faith traditions are saying about the environment. So I felt that was very, it was very useful to learn because I didn't know a lot of that. And then, yeah, learning some of the science also was very useful because I feel like you can have better discussions with people that don't necessarily adhere to a faith tradition, but the science might appeal to them, right? So that I feel like was very useful, especially people that deny climate change. I really liked reading more about that. I felt like it was very useful. And then also meeting people online, in our homerooms, that was really nice, and getting feedback from our homeroom leaders. Huda was really, really great. I sent her my project, and she gave us some feedback and some really good tips. And it was nice seeing people on Zoom, but then also, I didn't attend all of the wasn't able to attend everything, as I mentioned to you, because of Ramadan and the timings. But then coming here in person, it was just so much better than I had expected. Initially, when I was coming here, I thought, what are we going to do for 5 days? Like, I didn't understand why it was so long, but now that I'm here, I feel like we could do this for 2 weeks. Like, this needs to be longer. We don't have enough time, number one, to learn everything and get the feedback, and that I feel like we could benefit from even a longer time period. And then meeting everyone in person and meeting the people from other faith traditions, just learning from them and their experiences, it's been really, really eye-opening. And I feel like I made so many adjustments to my project and kind of like widened the scope of what I was thinking, just hearing from everyone else. Like, they kind of inspire you to think in a direction that maybe you weren't thinking initially. So it's been really, really great. Like, I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, I feel like it's such a great program. I feel like it needs to be offered every year. And just I'm making a list of people in my mind who I think could benefit from this. Especially in our, like in Islam, the imam holds a very powerful role. And I feel like maybe next time we can do some targeted outreach to imams in different communities and get them to come here, because I feel like they can really, really make a difference. Yeah, so it's been great. Everything's great. The people here are amazing. The biggest thing that I'm taking away that I can think of right now is just the connections that we've made with other faith leaders, not just here in the US, but across the world. It's just been so, so we've already exchanged contacts, and we're already, like adding each other to our groups, and that's an opportunity that we would not have had otherwise. So it's really, really great. So I'm taking away those connections, the networking, that we've done here. I think it's going to be really, I'm already thinking, how can we invite some of these people from other countries to our community to share their projects that they're doing, right? Some of the work that they're doing is so important, and it's, just hearing from them, it made me realize that sometimes we can think a lot bigger than we are. So I'm taking, that, and then just, I have a complete new project idea that I hadn't thought of when I came here. So just taking away that inspiration, ideas, collaboration in the future, hopefully. So for us personally, we've already started talking with the brothers that came from Wisconsin, from the Milwaukee Mosque. And we're already talking about, like, what can we do together? Maybe we can, like have a theme that we work on each month, and both of our communities do it at the same time, right? So we're not like repeating efforts, just one of us can do something and the other one can take their ideas, take their work, and just replicate it in our own community, and then the other way around as well. So I think it's really, it's been really great.